Yuto has the same nightmare every time, finding himself submerged deep in darkness. A voice wakes him up, warning him of the wall of spikes coming his way. Finding himself in a cell, he runs to one end, and the wall fortunately stops. He realizes the situation he's in and frantically searches for a way out. Unfortunately, all exits are locked. Looking into the hole where the voice came from, he sees Jin, a crying girl who was obviously another victim. According to her, the wall inches forward every 2 minutes, so they have to escape by then. In her room, he sees an axe on the floor. However, there are no windows in her cell, unlike his. As he asks her to hand it over, she makes him swear on his life that he won't abandon her when he escapes. Pressured by the moving wall, he does so. The girl pushes the handle through, but the hole is too small for the blade itself. She tries to make the hole bigger, but the axe simply chips and cracks upon hitting the granite wall. With the hopeless situation, she's left in tears, not even knowing how she got to that situation. After napping on the subway, she suddenly found herself lying on an iron bed. Hearing this, he gets up, urgently telling her to take the bed apart and hand him the bars. He'll climb up afterward and smash her wooden roof to get her out. Determined to survive, they make haste, and he quickly pries his windows open. As he hurries out, they see that the wall doesn't stop moving. Jin cries as she scoots away, believing that she'll be left to die. She remembers when she had to use traditional medicine on her friend Jian after he injured his ankle on a mountain trip. Her other friends, Dong and Fang, called her out to talk. The situation was dire, as there had been way more snow than expected. Their only option to survive is to act fast and escape without their injured friend, hoping to rescue him later. An argument sparks out, as Jin is completely against the idea of abandoning him. Jian hears them from the cave and is in disbelief that they're even considering it, despite their relationship. Not wanting to die as a group, they go through with their plan, separating into pairs and dividing their remaining food. She treats his ankle, saying she understood their friend's decision, and tells a story about sins being forgiven during times when survival is uncertain. As he gets too close and asks her to be a couple, she rejects his advances and walks out to look for food. She scavenges for whatever they can use. However, when she returns to the cave, she finds it completely empty. The saying of sins forgiven in times of survival was etched on the wall. In the cell, she curses all the men for abandoning her. Just then, a hole opens in her roof, and Yuto appears to save her life. After thanking and apologizing at the same time, she finally introduces herself as a sophomore at a medical college. However, her jovial introduction is cut short, as he brings her attention to the deserted island they're on. Seeing that they're in a lighthouse, they find a ladder and descend for now, easing down in caution of the rain. Another problem appears, as they see that part of the ladder is missing. Yuto bravely jumps down to the lower portion and tells Jin to follow, not noticing that a few screws came undone. Putting her faith in him, she jumps down and is successfully caught. Just then, they're shocked as the ladder falls apart, sending them down to the sea. Falling first, it's as if his limbs are tied down, sinking deeper into the water. As he apologizes, Jin drags him to the surface and carries him back to the lighthouse's walls, unwilling to let him die and leave her alone. She pants in exhaustion and sees a sketchy room under the lighthouse. Letting go of her fears for now, she walks into the dark room, not noticing the camera watching from above. The girl turns a light on and screams as she sees a sunken corpse on a chair. Her tears fall as she notices a presence behind. A man named Zen puts a knife by her neck, ordering her to lay Yuto down first. Believing that she kidnapped him, he questions how she brought him there and threatens to force answers out. Desperate to prove herself, Jin tells him to ask Yuto if he doesn't believe her, explaining how they found themselves in the lighthouse just earlier. He agrees to interrogate the unconscious young man, warning that he'll stab him if she says anything. He wakes up with a scream, as Zen steps on his hand, catching him by the hair and putting his knife by his throat. For some reason, he's unable to remember who Jin is. She screams in disbelief, reminding him of what happened just moments ago. Staying true to his warning, the stranger forces Yuto's hand to the ground, following through with his knife. Zen forces Yuto's hand to the ground and drives his sword right between his fingers. It's his warning for now, promising to cut through his fingers if they disobey again. The young man screams in fear, insisting that he doesn't know the girl. Remembering the incident from earlier, Jin explains that they fell from the lighthouse and how he fell into the water head first. Because of this, His mental capacities might have been compromised. In other words, amnesia. He gets annoyed at the cliché reasoning and continues to suspect them. She begs for a way to prove their innocence, so he tells her to explain, in one word, why someone she just met would sacrifice himself to save her. As he counts down, the thought of them dying and turning into mummies years later fills her mind. Just then, an idea comes to mind, and she asks how long he's known his oldest friend. Adding on, she wonders if his decades-long friends would all sacrifice themselves to save him. Painful memories fill his mind. He draws his knife back, unable to beat her argument, and tells her to treat the injured young man. With a completely different personality, Yuto is unable to believe that he acted with bravery and intelligence just moments ago. His memory was cut for years, and he even had trouble with Chinese. He pathetically refuses to open his eyes, worried that he'll be killed if he sees his captor's face. As he's forced to open them, Jin examines the mummy behind them, wondering how it even got there in the first place. Needing to make sense of things, they lay it down and tear its clothes off. Surprisingly, they find the number 0834 carved into its chest. Unable to understand, belated Zen introduces himself as a member of the Eastern Gang and woke up on the island a few days ago. The way he sees it, a smuggler named Ming bumped into the Coast Guard and left them there in one of his cargoes. Surprisingly, Yuto disagrees, recalling how they woke up in a rigged room and how a human trafficker would unlikely go through that trouble. Considering the numbers on the corpse and everything they've gone through so far, he says that it's more like a puzzle game in which they collect clues to escape. There's nothing else inside and out of the lighthouse, but Jin suddenly sees a scroll lodged in the mummy's ear. It's a tiny map of the island, indicating a few structures and marks. Yuto finds it familiar, but gets a huge headache, unable to remember what it is exactly. Zen is infuriated, but is unable to hit the patient. In pain, he falls unconscious while trying to remember. The older man walks out to smoke, questioning the identities of the two around him. The next day, he jogs them awake, saying they're going to the X mark on the map. He believes that something or someone must be waiting for them there. It might not be the best idea, but he isn't asking for their opinion. From that moment on, he considered them his slaves, who do nothing but obey his orders unconditionally, unless they wanted to die. While moving through the woods, Zen suddenly tells them to stop and rummages through a pile of hay to reveal bloody spikes at the bottom. While Jin is glad to know that another human is there, her naivety is scolded, as the person who made the trap will likely have no inhibitions about killing them. For now, they must keep their presence hidden and get rid of their tracks. The two are tasked with collecting precious resources secretly and distributing only a certain amount every day. While unfair, they're unable to defy him, afraid of being killed. They foraged for food as agreed, even letting a wild rabbit run to safety. However, Zen takes it out instantly, saying they'll roast it in a nearby cave. Finishing his meal, he eyes Jin inappropriately, then tells her to make a bed of hay in the cave. Separating the two, he orders Yuto to stand guard while he helps the girl, and not to come in, no matter what. He follows inside, and screams ring throughout the forest. The vile man forces himself on her, completely disregarding her cries for help. Fortunately, the young man runs in, commanding him to get off her. He gulps his fear down, standing tall to protect his friend, despite being way weaker than him. To their surprise, he goes on about how they're a team with individual roles, just like in a game. It earns him a huge punch to the face, as Zen stomps away in annoyance at his childish words. He later thinks about the incident, and the sheer ridiculousness and innocence convince him that they're not someone else's minions. Feeling shameful that he was lectured, he wonders how long they'll be stuck there. Cries of help suddenly echo from the forest. The group runs to the source and sees a man frantically running from an unseen pursuer. He falls into the spike traps and gets up, bleeding. Walking to him is a tribal man, who raises his stone axe and ruthlessly brings it down. As he's dragged across the ground, a screen appears, indicating that the man's game ended on the second day. As the strange man leaves their sight, they decide to return to the cave for now. Later, they wonder who the person was, even considering that he may be a cannibal. They have no answers for now, but it's surely more dangerous than they initially expected. While foraging the next day, Jin screams as a mouse comes close. Zen suddenly appears with a knife, thinking that the cannibal is there. He scolds her for making a fuss over a mouse, but they tease him, saying he came quite fast and must be protecting them from the shadows. Triggered by the surprise, the girl separates to relieve herself, warning them to stay far away. She finishes her business, but suddenly feels a strange presence lurking nearby. Hearing her scream, the two immediately run to rescue her and see two of the tribal men holding her down. The other takes his stone axe, positioning it over her head. Yuto runs to save her, but he's obviously too far. Just then, a bullet shoots through the man's head, prompting the other to run away. As they regroup, Tracy, a member of the LAPD, appears with a gun, saying they have to evacuate before the savages return. Insisting that there's someone else they can rendezvous with, she calls Zen out. He reveals himself, studying her closely, certain that he's seen her before. Brushing it off as being mistaken for someone else, she checks on the savage, but is surprised to see that she missed her shot, something unusual for a champion shooter. Before they could check further, the other tribe men returned, shooting arrows at them. Tracy stays behind to hold them off, giving the others directions to escape to. They reach a creek and cool off, wondering what happened to the officer. While she's gone, Zen speaks seriously, saying they must never speak of the map or code they found to whoever else they meet. He's certain that they weren't sent by anyone to kill him, so he promises to protect them, as long as they obey his orders. If they work together, they should be able to escape alive. Jin wants to follow Yuto, who positively considers the offer, as there are several benefits to teaming up. He uses game terms again, but ends up agreeing to the proposal. Leading with gangster rules, Zen has everyone vow to get along and work together, each wagering a ruthless punishment in case of betrayal. Just then, Tracy reappears, saying they have a better chance of surviving if they regroup with her company. They make their way through the island, trekking and rappelling to maneuver around dangerous cliffs, eventually reaching their destination. Some of her companions are glad that she's safe, but someone named Romeo isn't happy with how she wasted bullets to save strangers. This irks Zen, who wants to start a fistfight. The others stop him, saying it's against their rules to hurt teammates, but add that he's completely free to curse him back. Based on the rules broken, the punishment is either exile or death, and Tracy is the chosen executor. He then questions what would happen if she suddenly decided to be a dictator. She assures him that it won't happen, but that he's free to leave if he disagrees. A moment of silence passes, and he eventually accepts their terms. With this, they're now partners, so the others introduce themselves. One man is Ishiga, the president of a conglomerate. Another is Waku, a Taiwanese basketball player, and Romeo is an actor. The others explain Yuto's amnesia, and they move on to Tracy's discoveries. About an hour and a half into the woods, she found a massive architectural complex. She was too far away to see it clearly, but she describes it as a giant monster sleeping in the mist. Since their opinions vary, they take a democratic approach and hold a vote, taking the newcomers' opinions into account. Zen asks about waiving votes, something Jin agrees to do. Yuto sides with those wanting to explore the structure, saying they'll be discovered there eventually. With that, the winner is decided. But the gangster suddenly cuts in, saying he hasn't voted yet, and only asked about waiving. He votes to stay in their base, wanting nothing but to cause discord, and see how the leader would approach such situations. As he didn't break any rules, no repercussions are warranted. Amused, Ishiga plays along, and says they'll move on to the second vote. But before that, he takes out a wad of checks, saying he'll pay all those who side with him $10 million in compensation. While it isn't worth much now, a single vote would set their life after escape. He reasons that it isn't bribery, but another method of canvassing, by promising a better future for everyone's collective interest. Now that it's his turn to canvass, Zen easily takes his companions' votes and offers triple the president's offer, saying that it'll come from the same person's pocket. Their situation is the same but different, but those around them are left to pick a side, not knowing that they're wagging their tail at whoever has the better offer. He then questions the president's validity, explicitly asking if he was writing a blank check. With that done, they proceeded to vote. To their surprise, the tie is broken as Romeo sides with Zen, saying there are no permanent enemies, but there are permanent interests. They slyly smile at Ishiga, knowing he's been outsmarted and duped. While moving through the forest, Zen suddenly calls Tracy out, saying he has something to discuss in private. She insists that he say it in front of everyone, but quickly takes her words back, as he whispers something in her ears. They watch them talk, but are unable to hear anything. After a while, the officer slaps him hard, saying he's gone too far. The others check on her, but she insists that it's fine, and that she doesn't want to talk about it. Moving forward, the group reaches a cliff and sees a huge clearing where the structure stands tall. It's like the Maya pyramids, but not exactly. There are several famous ones, but the one in front of them is most similar to the Maya on the outside. Unable to make further deductions, they move in for now, staying alert in case savages appear. The closer they get, the more tremendous the structure becomes. Jin is filled with fear, beginning to question where they really are, as she thinks about the things they've encountered so far. Still with the mind of an immature child, Yuto tries to cheer her up with misplaced optimism, reminding her that the structure is marked on the map. His silliness and ignorance eventually manage to cheer her up, allowing the young lady to laugh out loud. Meanwhile, Tracy finds fresh burn marks on the ground. Finding batteries by the source, they ascertain that it isn't the savages doing. There must be others who rested there and entered the pyramid recently. After a while of exploring, Ishiga wants to go inside. With another split decision, Zen suggests splitting into two, with one group entering and the other standing guard outside. Forming groups, the president gathers the officer, the medical student, and the athlete to form a proficient group of explorers. As the rest are left behind, Jin looks at her leader with a troubled expression. Left alone, Romeo immediately tries to coax the gang member into forming an alliance to endlessly extort Ishiga. To his surprise, Zen completely refuses, saying he doesn't desire to work with such pathetic losers. With that, he takes his knife out, telling the actor to surrender his check, adding that there's no one to witness his crime. The democratic voting doesn't interest him at all, as there is no such thing on that island. Inside the pyramid, the explorers see that the walls are riddled with ancient writing, far too old for them to understand. Meanwhile, Jin is still lagging behind, her head filled with thoughts. Moments ago, she spoke to Yuto, admitting that Zen was poisoned by a hidden creature in her hair ribbon, back when he tried to violate her. He's supposed to die in 7 days, but she thankfully slipped him the cure already. That said, it'll cause him excruciating pain, almost comparable to death itself. Knowing that the time is coming, she hopes he'll be okay. As if on cue, the gangster's stomach begins to ache, so he leaves to relieve himself. However, savages suddenly come rushing in. They run for their lives, but the gangster keels over in pain. Realizing what's happening, Yuto turns around to rescue him. Believing that no one will even mourn him, Zen worries about his companions, promising to be a better person in his next life. Just then, the young man reaches him and carries him inside. Panicking, Romeo randomly pulls a wooden bar, causing the pyramid door to fall slowly. The two barely make it in time. The exploration team regroups with them and is given a quick rundown of the situation, with the actor reasoning that he had no choice but to shut the gate. Regardless, they're stuck inside and have no choice but to find another exit. Just then, Jin notices Yuto's swollen arm. Hearing that it doesn't hurt, she immediately asks for a knife and cuts through his flesh. He plays it calm, but she trembles in horror as the potent neurotoxin completely stops him from bleeding. Her tears fall, and others stare in shock as she says that she can't save him. In a moment of vulnerability, Zen begs her to save him, bearing the guilt that he sacrificed himself to save him. He bangs on the stone wall, wanting to leave to get a cure himself. Yuto assures them that he's still alive, and that fear at that point serves no purpose. Completely calm, he suggests finding a way out and getting their hands on the cure to save him. Wasting a second on useless emotions will only bring him closer to death. Ishiga is surprised by his level-headedness, considering how he's supposed to have an immature brain. While he has no special skills, he might have the strongest survival instinct among them all. With this, they set a new goal, which Romeo vehemently disagrees with. He repeatedly calls for a vote, not knowing that everyone's silence and swift movement indicate that he's already lost. He rushes to follow, afraid of being left alone. Moving down, they touch moist walls and hear water flowing. They see light at the doorway and are shocked to find a huge hall flooded with water. As the fluspar illuminates the room, Yuto's head aches again, finding the area uncannily familiar. They suddenly hear a cry for help, coming from a group of 4 in the water. Knowing that they won't drown anytime soon, Ishiga tries to grasp the situation first and asks who they are. The man in the center says they probably got dumped on the island, just like them, adding that the professor in his arms can read the writings on the wall. The water rises and falls, but they just barely missed the timing to escape. He swears that they've cracked its code and know the exit, pleading to be rescued. Waku ties a rope around a brick and sends it their way. When the man gets a firm grip, the group begins to pull them to safety. The large and bulky man, Andre, expresses his gratitude, saying he owes them a lot. Ishiga watches Andre closely. Based on his build and the scent of blood surrounding him, he certainly isn't a regular person. Agreeing to introduce himself, he shares that he's a Russian mercenary and member of Israel's military. The stout man is Ding, a crosstalker. Rika is a housewife from New Zealand, and Professor Gerard is an archaeologist. While unconscious, he should be fine after resting for a bit. Hearing the urgency in Zen's voice, the man wakes up, saying that the exit is in front of them and that they can get to it bit by bit. According to the writings on the wall, the exit is found at the highest point of the room, which they can reach when the water rises. There are water inlets on the 4 sides of the room, which open and close in a pattern they've already figured out. Moreover, there are pillars of different levels, all leading to the highest one. While the answer might seem simple, it's far from that, as pouring water inlets create a strong current, preventing them from swimming freely. They made the mistake of risking it earlier, which led to the situation they found them in. Several factors hinder survival. Just then, the water pours once more, and everyone sees the chaos that ensues. As the inlets open in 10-minute intervals, Zen rushes, feeling the urgency from Yuto's poison. Ishiga calms him down, knowing how he feels, but rationally explaining that not even his injured friend would be able to swim directly to the highest pillar. As they talk about the right pillar to choose, Yuto simply tells them to move in a straight line, gesturing to the pillars in front, directly leading to the highest. The others agree, considering the water level and the pillars' height intervals. With this strategy, it'll take an hour at most. That said, the plan will leave the weak ones in danger, unable to swim far enough. An option would be to have the strong members travel and pull the ones left to safety. Even then, the timing will leave those at the end at higher risk than others. Romeo complains and suggests drawing lots to keep things impartial, unwilling to let the weaker ones be pulled in first, calling Yuto in particular dead weight. Zen punches him in anger, but the gangster finds himself on the ground, subdued by Andre, with Tracy pointing a gun at his head. Ishiga reminds him about their rules and agrees that drawing lots is the only fair way to do things. Rika gets the last spot, but the president gladly trades his first-place lot with hers. As the water surges, they proceed with the plan. The mercenary easily makes it to the platform and proceeds to pull the others up one by one. While pulling the 7th, the room began to shake. The water pours, and Ishiga barely gets to the rope in time, leaving the housewife crying in relief. As they question how the savages could build something so complex, Gerard says it was likely built by Guion, a mysterious ancient civilization. Around 1500 years ago, they were the predators of the famous Maya civilization, and as such only have records from them. The writings on the wall match those in Mayan literature, a simple language form with 20 characters. On the gate of the chamber, it clearly explained that the exit is at the highest point. That said, the savages aren't the Guion, but they're slaves, soldiers, and food. In the Maya language, the Guion means the almighty and wise Naga. The others are stunned after hearing the mythical beast's name. Moreover, it's said that the entity's intelligence is far greater than others, and even has tales speaking of eternal life. One day in 1500 BC, the immortal suddenly disappeared, along with the island they lived on. Yuto's head hurts, as everything seems all too familiar to him. They decide to cure him before anything else. The water surges in, and they successfully reach the next platform. However, they see a gate at a nearby pillar, on the same level as theirs. Realizing that it might be the exit, they consider the options that'll allow them to reach it. However, the next pouring will come soon, so anyone who tries to go will face certain death. Andre recalls a saying in Russia, discouraging the changing of course, in moments of confusion. Ishiga agrees, believing in the instructions on the walls. However, Yuto calculates the time it'll take to reach the highest pillar, and says that doing so would leave them no time to change their mind, as the platform with the gate will be submerged by the time they reach the top. Additionally, if the water doesn't stop pouring after, the entire space will be submerged. The others are certain that a drainage and circulation system is in place. As the situation has too many factors to consider, they choose to heed their leader's decision and head to the highest ground. Andre reaches it as planned and sees a gate at the other end. Zen and Waku slip down, so the mercenary pulls Rika up for now. Entranced, she moves to the gate, palming the inscriptions when her hand suddenly pushes a trigger. The gate turns and pulls her in, and Tracy sees the gate from earlier open up. As the others are told what happened, Ishiga tells them to think of a way to save the woman. However, Gerard reads the letters, calling for a sacrifice to open the gate. With no time to grieve, he explains that pressing the button will stop the water from rising, and that the drainage will soon activate, leaving them no choice but to ride the falling water to the platform. Knowing that the vortex will be extremely strong, Waku volunteers to swim ahead and find somewhere to tie their rope to. It isn't ideal at all, but it's the only thing they can do. As the current swirls down, they hold on tight, but Ding begins to lose consciousness from the pressure. He remembers his childhood, when he was relentlessly bullied for stuttering. Back then, an old man approached him, eloquently reciting a poem. He empathizes, as he also suffered from severe stuttering, which only ended after decades of training himself. Because of his feat, the old man received the name Zhuge. Guiding the boy, he says he must never give up. With this, Ding regains consciousness, breaking the surface of the water. The others pull him to safety, and they all reach the exit to the altar. As they cross, Ishiga looks back at the platform where Rika died. Making their way through a dark corridor, they see huge pieces of snakeskin on the walls. It's not the Nagas, but it's been there for hundreds of years. Moreover, human skeletons are scattered throughout the area. They suddenly hear Yuto singing and realize that he isn't looking good at all. The poison has spread far, and they have to find a cure soon. Andre carries him, barely convincing Zen to allow it. The others call out, having found the altar that the writings were talking about. However, no exit is in sight. Desperate to find something, the gangster rushes up the platform and sees a gate, along with a wall of inscriptions. Gerard takes a look and speaks of a tale about humans angering a god. As penitence, they offered sacrifices to the python god. Seeing this, the professor asks that someone try lying on the altar. As soon as Tracy's back sets down, the gate opens up. He then tells her to get up, which makes the gate slam back shut. According to the writings, the ritual requires a sacrifice. To ensure the others' survival, one must be left behind. Keeping calm, Waku suggests using rocks to reach the required weight instead. They find one with difficulty, but it crumbles like sand, having been weathered down by time. With no other choice, they decide to leave someone behind. A cruel conclusion. Romeo suggests leaving Yuto, who's essentially turned into a rag doll. He insists that it's ridiculous to sacrifice someone in exchange for someone who's already dying. While it might be cruel, Ishiga agrees with his point, believing that the young man would share the same sentiments. They decide to vote on it, with Zen not even objecting. The hands go up one by one, and the majority votes to leave Yuto behind. The gangster accepts the result, but says that anyone who harms his friend will have to face him. Adding on, Andre, the strongest of the bunch, supports him, unable to abandon a comrade. Disregarding the rules, Zen knocks Romeo out and opens a vote to leave him behind instead. With 0 objections, their sacrifice is decided. As they rush through the gate, Yuto's breath gets weaker. Meanwhile, a few are in awe of the gangster's mind, which considered all possibilities and factors, including everyone's individual psyche. By choosing the perfect words, he got everyone's indirect approval to abandon the source of the group's negative energy. Making it to the end, a gate opens to reveal the outdoors. Jin looks around, unsure if there's anything to use as a cure. She hypothesizes that the savages must use snake poison, and as such, would have the cure near a snake nest. They find it soon enough, and let the young man recover. To Ishiga's pleasant surprise, Zen volunteers to bring Romeo back, asking Andre to help carry rocks for weight. The others are given tasks for their survival. As the mercenary moves, he shares a quick look with Tracy, something the president clearly notices. Meanwhile, Romeo regains consciousness and leaves the altar. He bangs on the shut gate, calling for help. However, all his noise attracts is a sinister being that looms over. As he screams in terror, the two hear the actor's cries from the other side and quickly retreat as they realize that he's a lost cause. Meanwhile, Yuto wakes up, already feeling much better than earlier. Unfortunately, everyone's relief is cut short, as Ding frantically runs back, being chased by a huge snake. They all flee, but the crosstalker trips. Fortunately, Tracy shoots the beast away. While running, he says that Waku fell off a cliff while escaping. Just then, Zen appears and charges at the snake. He puts up a fight, but gets tossed over the cliff. Ishiga assures them that he'll be okay, as he saw a lake at the bottom. Moreover, the reptile retreats, heavily injured from the battle. At the lake, the gangster rescues the athlete, bringing him back to land and performing chest compressions. Now seemingly safe, they notice large leeches on each other's bodies and burn them all away with a lighter. However, the troubles don't end, as odd bubbles appear. Zen pops one, immediately rendering them unconscious. Making their way down, the bigger group encounters the bubbles as well, but Jin warns them not to touch them. Now much better. Yuto sees his companions and rushes by their side. While things look bad, the medical student assures them that it'll be fine, as long as they rest for a while. As accurate as ever, they wake up soon after, and are met with their recovered friend's smiling face. They explain how Romeo likely died, and immediately move on to their next steps. Just then, an arrow lands at their feet, and they belatedly realize that they're surrounded by savages. Gerard relays that the leader, Mogu, told his men to stay put for now. Surprised, the stranger walks in their direction and shockingly asks how the professor knows their language. They're all equally confused, so the savage says that the Guyon knows only of one modern man with one eye and asks for their relationship. The information leaves the professor stunned. Pressured for an answer, Gerard admits that he doesn't know what he's talking about and that he learned the language from his professor Zico, who's been dead for dozens of years. That said, when he was still alive, he did in fact only have one eye. With a heavy heart, Gerard attended the funeral of his mentor Zico and bid him one last goodbye. At present, while the tribesmen lead the survivors to their village, Gerard suspects that the doctor they are talking about is his mentor, who also obtained a degree in medicine. Arriving at the village, the survivors can't help but feel nervous by the stares of the tribesmen. The leader communicates that if they fail to heal his father, it will result in dire consequences for them. Stealing her resolve, Jin follows to help, but Mogu gets angry upon seeing a woman volunteer to heal his father. In their tribe, women are a minority, and they are forbidden to do anything. He opposes this, and tells them that a one-eyed man cured them way before. Gerard insists that only Jin knows how to cure, and they can't bring another man who has medical knowledge. Just then, a tribesman with a decapitated hand appears and speaks with the leader. The professor translated it for Jin, saying that the old man is telling his brother to let the woman in and give it a try. The man, whose name is Eden, then adds that the survivors might be powerful like the one-eyed old man and handle the curse in their village. Convinced, the leader let them in, and they met the chief of the village. Later, Jin diagnosed that the chief has malaria, and they should keep him dehydrated, but he needs an oral intake of quinine. Since none of them has it, Jin thinks of extracting the medicine from the bark of cinchona. Gerard arrives and tells them that only 3 people are allowed to search for herbs in the rainforest, and the rest stay as hostages. If the 3 don't come back with any medicine before sunrise, all of the hostages will be executed. The survivors then decide that it is best for Jin, Tracy, and Andre to all go and search for the cure. That night, heavy rain poured on the whole village. Yuto expresses his worry over Jin and the others, while Zen prays for their safety. Meanwhile, Gerard analyzes the writings in their prison cell, saying that the tribe worshipped Guyon Naga as their god and brought the infected to the altar as offerings to stop what they believed was the curse of the god. Until 10 years ago, a group of white men conquered their land and brought people to the fire-spitting mountain. A one-eyed man walked out of the fire-spitting mountain and came back to the village. Unlike the other men, he could speak the Guyon language and mastered the art of healing. When another plague hit the village, he was able to help everyone with his medical knowledge, and no one died. Respected for what he did for the village, he gradually integrated into their lifestyle and lived with the tribe for many years. In return, many people learned to speak his language as well. However, one day, a fleet of ships docked near the village, and the one-eyed man suddenly disappeared. Based on the clues, the professor can't help but think that his mentor is the one being described in the writings. Meanwhile, in the rainforest, the trio is still looking for a cinchona plant. Jin describes the plant to her group as a red and green flowering tree. As they continue to thread the forest, Andre thinks about not letting Tracy off the hook again. Suddenly, Jin exclaims that she has found a cinchona. Back in the tribe, Ishiga can't believe that the professor's mentor is still alive, and he asks how it is possible. Instead of answering, Gerard reminisces about the time when his master was spearheading research supported by a private organization, which Zico refused to name. This organization made his mentor sign many papers, including a body donation, once he died. As a result, Zico's body was preserved after the funeral and taken away by the organization. However, he recounts that he saw his mentor die from a heart attack, but still can't dismiss his suspicion that he might still be alive. He remembers that 2 years ago, he went to visit Zico and found his favorite dog lying dead on the floor. The mentor saw him, but remained calm about his dog's death. As Giraud continued to be bothered by the dog, Zico asked him if he remembered what those tribe in Guyane meant. At first, the mentor thought it was just a greeting that translated into boundless long life, but it simply means the ancient civilization learned to control life and death. He then brought out a vial with green liquid and got a sample of it. He injected it into his dog, and the pup immediately came back to life, much to Giraud's shock. It was revealed that it was a fake death drug sponsored by the mysterious company. Zico then asked Giraud if he remembered the meaning of the Guyane word Molekun Mode. The mentee answered that it meant eternal life. The professor then asked if he would sacrifice everything in search of an eternal life. At present, Giraud can't help but think that they were brought to an unknown island full of Guyane civilization for a reason. Yuto tells him that as long as they cure the village chief, they can escape and find the answers in the volcano where the first group of conquerors went. Meanwhile, the trio is still gathering herbs in the rainforest. Andre is shocked when Tracy aims a gun at him, but it turns out there's a wild animal behind. They are then shocked to see forest monkeys that look so feral. The next morning, the hostages are gathered by the savages, as Jin and others haven't arrived yet. While others remain calm, Ding cries from fear of being executed. As the tribe hates cowards, they choose to execute him first. As they are about to impale him, the trio arrive, saving the others from being executed. Later, Ding wakes up inside his cell and can't believe that he survived a near-death experience. Meanwhile, Jin gives the decoction medicine to the chief. The leader thanks her for saving his father's life and asks how they'll repay her. Hearing this, she tells them that they want to know the way back to their old lives. The brother brings the girl outside and tells her that he learned to speak civilized languages from the one-eyed man. However, the man was unwilling to teach them the treatment, unlike her. He points out that, through the woods, they will arrive at the fire-spitting mountain. Civilized people had traveled to it as well, but only the one-eyed man came back alive. She takes note of this, and mentions the feral animals they have encountered inside the forest. The man isn't shocked, as they also encountered the corpse-like monkeys. He tells her that under the fire-spitting mountain, the ghosts are suppressed by Guyane God. They deem it forbidden land, but the white-skinned intruders thought they could defeat the ghosts with their guns and met their demise. Aside from this, they had also broken the seal, which suppressed the ghosts. From that point forward, the immortal ghosts have been showing up frequently, and his arm is the proof of it. If the single-eyed man hadn't chopped it off, he would have become a ghost himself, rotting slowly and unable to recognize his own family. Later, Jin reports what she learns to the group, and the professor is skeptical about the ghost story. Andre tells him that the monkeys are true since they witnessed it. Hearing that they're unable to make a consensus, Yuto summarizes it for them. 10 years ago, Zico faked his death and was brought by a mysterious organization to the island to research eternal life from Guyane documents. Likewise, rotten and immortal ghosts appeared on the island. He then wonders if the monsters were created by the experiments. As there are more unanswered questions, the group decides to travel to the fire-spitting volcano to discover the mystery behind their situation. Elsewhere, a man with red hair visits another man named Mr. Liu. The red-haired guy reports that his boss admits misjudging the survivors, and they actually pass through the Guyane's altar. Since they lost the bet, he brings the stake to Liu and shows him a diamond. He then proceeds to explain that the remaining survivors were caught by the native tribe. Liu then bets that until Yuto is alive, it's impossible for the team to be wiped out. He then shows the red-haired half of his face that's skinned, saying that Yuto will get to the final answer. Just then, Zico appears, seemingly a little younger than before. He greets the red-haired and bets on the survival of the group as well. The man then takes his leave. As it's just the two of them, Zico tells Liu that he has so much faith in Yuto. The man tells him that the obstacles are nothing compared to what Yuto has been through. Seeing his confidence, Zico reveals that Yuto is suffering from amnesia from saving Jin. Just then, a blonde guy enters the room, saying that their partnership is giving them a problem. Meanwhile, back in the forest, Jin is teaching Eden herbs that can cure sickness. Zen approaches them and requests to try the man's puff. However, upon one puff, he hallucinates and falls unconscious, making the savage laugh. Later, the village prepares a feast to celebrate the recovery of their chief and to thank their guests. As they're drinking, Ishiga requests a guide tomorrow as they explore the volcano. Eden then volunteers to take them. Andre sees an archery match and challenges the leader to a match. After a friendly match, both are hailed as winners, and Andre gives his bonnet to Mogu. Later, Zen finally wakes up and finds the whole village celebrating without him. However, he hears a strange noise and tries to locate it. He then sees the monster monkeys devouring a person. Yuto and others come to his rescue. Jin steps up to tend to the injured tribesman named Sintra, but Eden stops her, saying that it is too late for the man. They need to cremate him immediately to stop him from turning into a monster as well. However, the leader refuses to cremate his warrior, as they believe only a burial can bring the soul back to the embrace of their god. With no other choice, Mogu decides to dismember Sintra's body and bury him. Hearing this, Zen looks threatened, and Ishiga becomes suspicious of him. Mogu tries to end Sintra's suffering, but the warrior bites him instead and runs away. Eden sees his injured hand and asks about it, but the leader tells him that he just scratched his hand. Later, Jin tends Mogu's wound as the whole tribe is looking for Sintra. Eden is suspicious of his nephew's wound. Meanwhile, the rest of the survivors are talking about how the creatures carry a deadly virus. They then discuss that they must continue their trip to the volcano no matter what, and must equip themselves against the monsters. Yuto asks Eden if he is the only one injured by monsters who survived. The man puffs before answering, as all of his injured tribesmen died except him. He reveals that the one-eyed man cures the curse of God, which was malaria, but then brings monsters with him from the volcano. The tribesmen began to rot and attacked their families. He recalls that his son, who was supposed to be the next chief, was also turned into a monster, and they had no choice but to kill him. Later, Zen asks Yuto if he has to kill him. Will he do it? The man answers that he won't kill anyone. Zen then asks if he wants diamonds, but Yuto replies that they are worthless on the island. He then urges his friend to rest as well. The next day, the team prepares to leave for the volcano. Unfortunately, Eden isn't able to guide them after the incidents in the tribe and tells them about Mogu's enthronement. Although they want to travel as soon as possible, the group attends the ceremony as they don't want to offend the tribe. Mogu drinks the blood of his father as a symbol of his reign. However, Eden laughs, telling the survivors that after being injured by the monster, the response time to the virus is not certain. However, when one eats the organs of the monster, the response will be immediate and reveal that he smeared the bowl with Sintra's organs. This is his revenge for his son's death, as it is revealed that Mogu smeared his meal with the monster's organs as well. As the chaos erupts, the group escapes, leaving the savages to turn to each other. After running away from the savages, the group accidentally split up inside the forest. Yuto, Ding, and Gerard end up together. Just then, Jin emerges and is running away from two savages. The trio continues to observe and see that the warriors are determined to kill her as she saves their village. Ultimately, they choose to let her go and point out the direction of the volcano. However, Gerard tells his companions that they have to be careful, as they aren't sure if the savages will spare them as well. They look at a map and decide that they should head north to look for the others and reach the volcano. Later, Ding recites a poem about missing someone, and Yuto thinks of missing Jin and Zen. However, while he is sleeping, another memory floods him. He yells at someone named Pang, who tragically drowned while he survived. Ding and Gerard check on him, but he is confused as well by the memory. Just then, he notices that the beach got smaller, and they are now surrounded by crocodiles. They decide to wait for the tide to fall and look for a way to circle back, rather than brave the waters. However, worried for his safety, Ding leaves the two and braves the water. He then dives deep to escape the crocodiles and swim to the next land. He's able to reach another part of the forest and run. He then looks for a rope to help the others and stumbles upon Zen. Upon hearing he ran away, Zen accuses him of abandoning their friends. However, Ding insists on going back to help the stranded survivors. Suddenly, they are surrounded by ghost monkeys. Zen urges Ding to go and save the others as he tries to distract the monsters. Ding comes back for the others and sees that the water continues to rise. They climb up the trees and use the rope to get to safety. Gerard safely crosses to another part of the beach while Yuto is still above the tree. His situation becomes riskier as the crocodiles have already noticed them. He tries to cross it while balancing as the predators attempt to bite him. He then runs upon landing, but the animals still try to catch up to him. As he is about to be bitten, Zen arrives and stabs the predator, revealing his now red eyes and injuries from fighting the monster monkeys. Gerard and Ding immediately tell Zen to leave, but Yuto convinces them that he's still in the latent period. They can help Zen once they reach the volcano and look for the antidote in Zico's lab. Gerard understands his sentiment, but can't risk Zen transforming as they locate the volcano. He suggests that the infected should keep their distance from them, and they will just mark the way for him. Zen agrees, but Yuto is worried that no one will be there to look after him. Zen thanks him for his concern, but he chooses to follow everyone from a safe distance. Meanwhile, Andre and Tracy stumble into each other inside the forest. They sit quietly next to each other, and Andre offers her food when he learns she's hungry. Jin finally locates the volcano, but is ambushed by someone. She screams, making Andre and Tracy run to her location. They then discover that Ishiga and Waku found Jin and are now eating as they're starving to death. However, they are suddenly surrounded by monkeys. On the other hand, Yuto and others are still finding their way to the volcano through the thick forest. They decide to find high ground to see their surroundings better. However, they get stuck in a swamp, and Gerard instructs them to lie down and swim across, like doing a backstroke. As they cross to safety, Ding panics at the sight of a venomous spider. He slowly sinks into the swamp and holds Yuto's foot. For a second, the man thinks about abandoning Ding, but he promises to save him. He then tells the professor to make a rope out of vines. Just then, Zen appears and attempts to cross the swamp as well. Yuto warns him that he might sink, so he has to be careful. In the end, Yuto is able to save them with his calm and collected thinking. Meanwhile, Jin and others are still escaping from the monster monkeys. They are conflicted about going to the volcano without any supplies, so they decide to split up into two teams. Jin is to collect herbs, Andre is in charge of security, and the others are to look for food. Back at Yuto and his group, they decide to rest for a while and climb up the hill with vines to find another way. However, Gerard and Ding notice that Zen's eyes have become redder and are afraid that he might transgress and attack everyone. They tell him he should go on a separate path again, but Yuto refuses vehemently this time, reminding him of his promise to not abandon his friend even in death. Yuto tells him they are brothers and can't just leave him to die alone. Moved by his words, Zen decides to stay but makes him promise to kill him when he turns into a vicious monster. Seeing their resolve, the other two back down and decide to survive with everyone. As Jin picks up herbs, Andre asks her how she passed the swamp. The lady tells him that the moment she tried to step on the swamp, someone threw a rock, signaling to the girl that it was something she could drown in. A rock is then thrown at the section where she can step on. She looks toward where the rocks are coming from and sees two savages in the bushes. Instead of admitting that they were trying to help her, they make the excuse that they were throwing rocks at some birds. She then turns her curiosity to how Ishiga and Waku got past the swamp. Elsewhere in the forest, Waku talks to Tracy about how he noticed that Andre seemed to be watching her. Yesterday, he saw the man following her. Tracy is uneasy, but not surprised. She shares that years ago, she joined an Interpol operation targeting a multinational drug cartel, and the case led them to the harbor. She and her colleagues were ambushed, and they got caught in the middle of a crossfire. The group then sees a speedboat escaping, and so they shoot at it. The last man on the boat shoots back, and so Tracy takes her down with a shot. The last man left on the boat looks like Andre wearing glasses. As he points his gun back at Tracy, a police helicopter suddenly puts a spotlight on him. Not wanting to get caught, he pulls back from shooting and focuses on driving. Later on, the man who got shot was identified as an Ivanov like Andre, and so she theorizes that he might be trying to take revenge. The three agree that they can't allow Andre to be alone with Tracy. Meanwhile, Yuto is walking with his group, and he wonders if Jin and the others are okay. He sees a bag of food in their way. They check, and they are surprised to see that the contents are still fresh. They wonder what kind of urgent emergency caused the others to leave their food. Yuto deduces that Jin and the others are heading for the volcano, and that they must go there as quickly as they can to meet up with them and get the antidote. Elsewhere, Jin's group is already hiking up the volcano. They suddenly realize that Ishiga disappeared. As they look for him, they hear Waku scream. Tracy accuses Andre of doing something to him, leading them to argue heatedly. Suddenly, both hear Jin screaming elsewhere, and they run toward the sound. They see that her body is sinking in quicksand, with her hand the only thing left on the surface. As they try to reach for her, they too sink, making them fall inside an underground cave. It is not long until they all find each other. Waku says he found Ishiga, and he leads them to his unconscious body by the nearby river. Andre sees that there is an apple by the water, making him conclude that since Ishiga was bringing the food with him, all their food got lost in the drift of the water. Meanwhile, Yuto and his group are now hiking up the volcano. As Zen hikes, he finds his vision starting to blur. At the right moment, the group spots a body of water, and they all decide to bathe in it. As they do, Gerard suddenly feels cold despite being in a hot spring, so he gets out before the others. As they wonder why the man is feeling cold, they see the jacket the other group was using to carry food hanging by the small waterfall. Inspecting the jacket, they feel like they are going in the right direction. They change their focus to the professor, who is feeling weak with a fever, and they realize he got infected with malaria. Yuto remembers that Jin has extra medicine with her, so they plan to go upstream quickly to get to her. They continue their hike, following the water, and they find an entrance to a cave. As the professor gets weaker, he can no longer continue inside. Zen volunteers to stay with him since his vision is so useless now to see inside the cave. Yuto protests, but the man is insistent that he stays behind. Just before the two enter the cave, Yuto promises to get Jin and the medicine. Zen doesn't realize that there is someone behind them, stalking. Meanwhile, Jin has looked into Ishiga's injury and concluded that he is extremely dehydrated. Andre decides to go with Tracy to find a path out, while Jin and Waku stay with Ishiga. Remembering that Tracy shouldn't be left alone with Andre, Waku suggests that he go with Tracy while Andre stays with the others. Tracy interrupts and tells them that she has no problem following Andre's suggestion, and so they march on. Elsewhere in the cave, Yuto finds an apple drifting by the river. Since he and Ding have been seeing fruit by the water for a while now, they guess that the other group must have lost their food in their travels. Meanwhile, Tracy and Andre pick a path out of many in the tunnels. They are surprised to see a man-made industrial tunnel. As they follow the corridor, they realize that Yuto's deduction about the research facility has been right all along. Seeing as they are at an intersection, they decide to split up to explore two different corridors. Meanwhile, Yuto and Ding have found the man-made tunnel too, and are exploring it. As the lights suddenly turn on, they are surprised and panic. They don't realize that Tracy has found an electric breaker and switched it on. As she explores more, she finds a metal door and enters it. She is shocked to see that inside is a huge underground power station, complete with cranes, towers, cargo shipping containers, and so on, as if she were in a harbor. The moment she touches something, the lights in the area turn red, and she sees someone close the door she entered. As she runs toward the door, she suspects Andre is up to something. Suddenly, someone at the crane controls drops a shipping container on top of her. Yuto hears the sound of the drop, and so he runs to the sound. Fortunately, the villain missed Tracy, and she is now on guard with her gun. She thinks she is hiding from Andre and throws her shirt to make a distraction. The moment she does, she makes a run for it, only for the assailant to shoot at her and miss. As a shadowy figure runs, so does she to follow. Meanwhile, Yuto and Ding see Andre running towards the sound just like them. Elsewhere, Tracy sees the shadowy assailant run towards the door. She shoots toward the door, just as Andre is about to enter. Feeling like he was almost killed by Tracy, Andre goes after her. Tracy knows that the man thinks she only has one bullet yet, and so she wants to trick him into the open. Just as she is about to look for Andre, Andre fires his crossbow, and she barely dodges. Yuto and Ding watch as the two chase each other. Our hero wants to put a stop to their fight, so he runs to them before it's too late. As the two are about to be near each other, Yuto shows himself and tells them to stop so they can help each other survive. Andre tells him that he knows she lied when she told them she was a police officer. Tracy accuses him of lying just to get revenge on her. Andre suddenly shoots at her, and she runs for cover. Confident that the woman doesn't have any bullets, the Russian taunts her for having nowhere to run. She shoots at him and misses. So Andre tells her from his cover that she made a cunning choice of tricking him into thinking she only had one bullet left. Tracy accuses him of using the crane to smash her under the containers, but the man doesn't know what she's talking about. The listening Yuto tells the lady that it couldn't have been Andre, since he and Ding saw him when the container dropped. He asks if she saw the man's face when he did it. While she tells him she didn't, it would be unlikely for someone else to be a tall man with a crossbow. As Andre thinks she is lying, the shouting only intensifies. Since both won't budge in trying to kill each other, Yuto threatens to drop the food bag he has on the giant metal fan under him. In the count of 3, if the two will not stop, he will drop it, assuring that none of them will survive for long. Seeing signs that Waku has low blood pressure, Jin gives him the last apple they have. Feeling that Ishiga needs it more, the basketball player offers to eat only half. Jin comments on his kindness, making the man reveal that his grandfather is a devout Buddhist who taught him how to be kind. As they converse, Yuto, Ding, Andre, and Tracy go to them. Jin and Yuto are glad to see each other safe. As Jin treats Ishiga, Juan asks her to come with him to where Gerard and Zen are, explaining that the former has malaria, while the latter got infected with the monkey disease. Yuto, Andre, and Jin rush to the cave entrance, only to find that the two are gone. They separate and search for them, but they find no one. They find Zen's knife chipped into the cave wall, and it seems to have been put there on purpose. Yuto asks Andre to jump up and get it. Realizing someone should be as tall as Andre to reach that height, our hero concludes that someone other than the two left it there. He tells the others to retreat for now and join the others. Once joining the others, Ishiga wakes up, and Jin examines him and sees that he will be okay. They then move on to the man-made tunnels. As they walk, Ishiga shares with Jin his jealousy of Yuto's leadership skills, since his skill as a software engineer is useless in their situation. They return to the power station, and Ishiga's experience as a rich man tells him that not even wealth can make a facility as advanced as this. Yuto deduces that the construction equipment must have been transported by sea, leading Ishiga to realize that the island has a harbor, and that there might be ships there. If there's no ship, they might find radio or satellite equipment they can use to get help. Yuto declares that their priority is to explore the lab, find medications, and get a map to lead them to the harbor. Through their exploration, they find the corpses of scientists all over the place. Just beside one is a door with an electric lock that requires an ID to access. Yuto searches the corpse's pocket and finds an access pass. They use it to enter, and they find that it is a room filled with advanced computers. Ishiga switches one on and finds that it still works. He tries logging in, but finds that he can't. He sees the master computer and goes there instead. He sees that he needs a passcode to enter, and while he can easily make a code breaker, the password is in 40 digits, so he needs at least a week to break through. His frustration ends quickly, seeing that there is a supercomputer in the middle of the room. He finds his groove and is confident that he can bypass the password quickly. For now, he can only turn on a few monitoring cameras around the lab. Yuto tells Ishiga to stay and crack the password, while the others split into two groups to continue exploring. As the groups explore, Ishiga guides them by looking at the camera views and talking through the intercom. Tracy's group finds the biochemical research lab. They enter to be shocked that the room is full of the bodies of immortal bodies in containers. They realize that the monkeys were created in this room. They search for the antidote to the immortal monkey, knowing it's close by. Meanwhile, Yuto's group finds the living area, with Ishiga warning them to enter with caution since his cameras don't reach there. Going inside, they find a security room, a bathroom, and so on. They search the lockers, and they find a biohazard suit in one of them. Yuto searches another locker and finds an ID from a U.S. Special Service lieutenant from the military, shocking the group. As Waku shows concern for the savage village, Andre tells him to keep his sympathies to himself, since he will drag everyone behind with it. His words spark trauma in the basketball player. As the others see that there's something wrong with him, he tells them that he has a severe psychological disorder. In the past, while in the middle of a basketball game, the end was near, and Waku was getting nervous about his role of hitting a buzzer beater. As he looked at the basketball ring with a cold sweat, he remembered his bedridden father's words about getting the championship cup for him. At the same time, his teammates told him that they'd pass the ball to him in the final second. He felt so pressured that he couldn't move, and he dropped the ball just before the buzzer. Since then, he has become unable to move in critical situations. The stress became so bad that he thought of quitting basketball, and it was only his coach that helped him receive psychological help. Andre realizes his insensitive words and apologizes to the man. Ishiga tells Team Yuto to go to the restaurant. Once there, they are shocked that the entire area is filled with skeletons. Yuto deduces that all of their meals were poisoned, and they all died suddenly. They see the dining room for seniors and enter it. As they look closely at a couch, they are shocked to see a man with a disturbing smile sitting there. Back in the room near the containers of immortal monkeys, Jin and the others find that the medication cabinets are all broken and empty. Ding shares his concern about how they couldn't save Zen, but Jin tells him that his father always told her that she needed to stay positive to get miraculous results. As he enters a different room, she screams, seeing the corpse of what seems to be a human-monster hybrid. Back at the restaurant, Andre points a gun at the smiling man, demanding to know who he is. Yuto stops him, realizing that the man is just a corpse. The Russian soldier doesn't understand, since he has dealt with so many bodies, and knows the man looks too fresh to be one. Yuto looks at the man's access card and finds that he is the lab supervisor. Andre looks into its pocket and finds a notebook with all of its pages ripped out. Andre then sees a mysterious man run behind Waku. He intends to chase after him, but before he can, Yuto tells him to leave the notebook. The soldier doesn't care and drops it before he runs. Our hero picks up the notebook and finds words written on the last page. Meanwhile, Jin and her group are walking to return to the computer center, and Jin shows her frustrations about all the unethical experiments in the facility, leading to a discussion about ethics for scientific progress. A grenade suddenly lands near them, so Tracy gets everyone out of the way of the explosion. Unharmed, they take cover under the stairs. Tracy thinks the enemy is Andre, but Jin doesn't want to believe it. They see the nearest door, and they plan to go near it, even if they need to go out in the open to get there. Tracy tells the other two that she will shoot bullets to give them cover while they run to the door and use the access card to swipe the door open. Ding volunteers to be the first to rush out, wanting to be courageous for the others. He runs before they can discuss it. A crossbow shoots at him, but it only tears flesh from his ears. He swipes the card and opens the heavy door. While he is holding the door, he lets the others in. Despite the others already entering, Ding doesn't move. It turns out he can't, because the arrow tip that grazed his ear was poisoned. The door closes without him entering. Tracy convinces Jin to move on so that his death won't be in vain. They run towards where they came from, but they find a door that was not locked before to be locked. They look for other exits until they find themselves in what looks like a shower room. Not wanting to get caught, the girls stay quiet in the room. However, the villain only pushes a button from the outside to fill the room with smoke coming from the shower heads. They try to get out, but the door is stuck. It is not long until the smoke renders them unconscious. As the smoke clears, the mysterious man enters, wearing a gas mask. Meanwhile, Yuto and his group return to the computers, and Ishiga tells them that it was Andre who set up the bomb and used it against Jin and the others. He saw vaguely from the cameras that Andre carried away Jin and the others with a trolley. He has no idea what happened after that, since Andre is sneaking outside the coverage of the cameras. He concludes that the man must have been in the facility before. Yuto tells Ishiga and Waku that they shouldn't move without preparation if he has indeed been in the place before. Ishiga thinks they can track his moves if only they have the password. Our hero pulls out the notebook they got from the fresh body and reveals that what is written on the last page is, "Judgment is coming soon, salvation lies within." They enter the message on the computer as a password, and they are glad to see they are correct in guessing that it is. However, the computer turns on another authentication test by raising a platform with a handprint scan on it. Yuto deduces that they need the hand of the fresh corpse they saw. The computer then announces a self-destruct procedure if the handprint is not confirmed within 10 minutes. As the timer starts, Yuto tells Waku he is the only one fast enough to reach the body in the restaurant and return within 10 minutes if he chops the arm off. Waku is opposed to the idea as a Buddhist, since it means desecrating the dead. However, Yuto and Ishiga counter that life is more important than the desecration of a corpse. Waku gets convinced and hurries to the restaurant. He grabs a knife and goes to the body. He pauses and finds the smiling face too terrifying to handle. He tries to endure it to chop the hand off, but he cannot stop looking at its face. He drops the knife and curls himself up, crying about how useless he is in critical situations. As they look at the cameras, Yuto shouts to the intercom that he still has a promise of shooting the ball and winning the championship, so he needs to get back up and run. They look at the camera and see that the encouragement has worked, as the man is already carrying the body on his shoulders and is running as fast as he can back to the computer room with a motivated face. With 2 minutes left, the athlete passes Andre by in a corridor. As the countdown goes under 60 seconds, the lights turn red and the alarm sounds go off. Waku runs as fast as he can until he reaches the computer room. Unfortunately, he trips and drops the body. With 10 seconds left, he gets back up and holds the body by the wrist to continue. As the timer is about to end, he jumps toward the panel, like a basketball player about to perform a dunk with the corpse's hand.